In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. The Washington arrived at the Brisbane's position just as the first Cathmori raider began its boarding approach. The insectoid vessel latched onto the human cruiser's hull with organic grappling claws, preparing to breach the armor and pour warriors into the ship's corridors. Admiral Chion's flagship opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts tearing chunks from the alien's carapace, but 2 more raiders were closing fast. "Brisbane, this is Admiral Chun," came the voice over the communication channel. "Can you break free from that grappler?" "Negative, sir," replied the Brisbane's captain, her voice tight with strain. "They've breached our main reactor containment. If we try to pull away, the whole ship goes up." Princess Zarethak gripped the armrests of her command chair as the Imperial's Pride raced through the asteroid field. Her ship was still 2 minutes away from the battle, and she could see the situation deteriorating rapidly. The second Cathmori vessel had attached itself to the Brisbane's starboard side, while the third was moving to attack the Washington directly. "Your Highness," General Korthax reported from the weapons station, "we're in extreme range. I could attempt a precision shot at the grappler connections." "Too risky," Zarethak replied. "If we miss, we'll hit the Brisbane. Get us closer." On the main screen, she watched as Admiral Chun made a decision that defied all military logic. Instead of maintaining safe distance and providing fire support, the Washington moved in close to the Brisbane and used its own hull to ram the second Cathmori raider. The impact sent both ships spinning, but it freed the cruiser from the alien's grasp. The admiral was fighting like a Veltar warrior, using his own ship as a weapon to protect his people. But humans weren't built for such tactics. Their vessels lacked the heavy armor and redundant systems that would let them survive ramming attacks. Even as Zarethak watched, she could see hull breaches opening along the Washington's port side. "All fighters," Admiral Chun's voice came through the communications array. "Focus fire on the remaining grappler. Brisbane, prepare for emergency jump to minimum safe distance." The human fighter craft swarmed around the still-attached Cathmori vessel, the smaller weapons chipping away at the organic connections holding it to the Brisbane's hull. But the raiders had evolved to resist such attacks. Their living ships could absorb tremendous punishment and keep functioning. That's when Princess Zarethak saw her opportunity. "General, target the junction point between the raider and the Brisbane," she commanded. "Plasma lance, minimum dispersal, maximum penetration." "That's an extremely difficult shot, Your Highness. 1 degree off target and we'll hit the human ship." "I'm aware of the risks." "Fire when ready." The Imperial's Pride had finally closed to effective range. On the targeting display, Zarethak could see the delicate intersection where the Cathmori vessel's boarding claws penetrated the Brisbane's hull. It was a shot that required absolute precision, the kind of marksmanship that separated elite gunners from merely competent ones. The plasma lance fired in a brilliant, purple beam that crossed the space between ships in microseconds. The energy struck exactly at the connection point, vaporizing the organic grappling mechanisms and cauterizing the breach in one precise stroke. The Cathmori raider tumbled away from the Brisbane, trailing atmospheric gases and biological fluids. "Brisbane is free," came the jubilant call from the human cruiser. "Engines coming online now." But the battle was far from over. The third Cathmori vessel, larger than the others, had closed with the damaged Washington. Instead of grappling, this one was using some kind of directed energy weapon that ate through the human ship's armor like acid. Admiral Chion's flagship was dying by inches, its return fire becoming sporadic as systems failed. "Your Highness," General Korthax said urgently, "we should withdraw. Our primary mission is to protect you, not—" "Our mission," Zarethak interrupted, "is to forge an alliance with humanity? That alliance means nothing if we abandon them in their moment of need." Attack pattern Veltar 7, full power to forward shields. The Imperial's Pride charged directly at the Cathmori capital ship, all weapons blazing. The raider turned to meet this new threat, its bioenergy weapon switching targets to the approaching Veltar vessel. Where the alien energy touched her ship's shields, they flared and sparked but held firm. Veltar defensive technology was generations ahead of human systems. As they closed the distance, Zarathak could see details of the enemy vessel through the main viewer. The thing was massive, easily twice the size of her ship, its hull covered in sensor organs and weapon clusters that twitched and moved like living tissue. Somewhere inside that nightmare, she knew, were hundreds of Kathmori warriors waiting to pour into any ship they could breach. "Close to ramming distance," she ordered. "Your Highness," General Korthax protested. "At this range, their boarding parties will never reach us," Zarathak finished. "Because we're not boarding them. We're going to do something they won't expect." The two ships were almost touching now, so close that the Kathmori vessel filled the entire forward viewer. Its organic weapons had stopped firing, unable to target something so near. The alien ship began extending grappling claws, preparing to latch on and begin boarding operations. "Now," Zarathak commanded quietly, the Imperials. Pride fired every weapon it carried directly into the Kathmori ship's hull at point-blank range. Plasma cannons, missile launchers, particle beams, and energy torpedoes all discharged simultaneously. At such close range, even the raiders' regenerating armor couldn't absorb the assault. The alien vessel came apart in seconds, its organic components vaporizing under the incredible energy release. The explosion hurled both the Imperial's Pride and the Washington away from the destruction site. Zarathak felt her ship shudder under the impact, but the Veltar shields held. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout. The vessel, as damage control teams rushed to repair, overloaded. "Systems, status report," she called, out as the bridge crew worked to restore full functionality. "Minor damage to secondary systems," General Korthax reported, his voice filled with professional respect. "That was expertly executed, Your Highness." On the main screen, she could see the rest of the battle winding down. The remaining Kathmori vessels, apparently discouraged by the loss of their largest ship, were withdrawing toward the system's edge. The combined human Veltar fleet had suffered damage but remained intact. Most importantly, they had protected Earth and all its billions of inhabitants. "Princess," Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. "That was some of the finest shooting I've ever witnessed. You saved my ship and my crew." "We saved each other, Admiral," she replied. "That's what allies do." As the Imperial's Pride moved to rejoin the fleet formation, Zarathak found herself looking at the human vessels with new eyes. She had seen their courage under fire, their willingness to sacrifice for each other, and their ability to work with former enemies when faced with a common threat. These weren't the weak primitives her people believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous and admirable. They were warriors who fought not for conquest, but for each other. The realization changed everything about her upcoming marriage. This wasn't a diplomatic sacrifice anymore. It was the foundation of something genuinely meaningful. The wedding ceremony took place under Earth's open sky, something that would have been unthinkable on any Veltar world. Princess Zarathak's people preferred enclosed spaces where every variable could be controlled, but humans seemed to thrive on uncertainty and natural beauty. The garden venue overlooked the ocean, with flowering trees providing shade and alien birds singing in the branches above. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to witness the historic union. Veltar nobles stood alongside human diplomats, their towering forms creating an impressive backdrop for the proceedings. But Zarathak's attention was focused entirely on Admiral Chun, who waited for her at the altar wearing formal dress uniform adorned with medals from conflicts she now understood had shaped both their peoples. The past 3 days had transformed her understanding of everything. The battle against the Kathmori raiders had shown her human courage in action, but the aftermath had revealed something even more profound. Instead of claiming victory or demanding rewards, Admiral Chen had spent hours visiting wounded crew members in the medical bay. He knew their names, their families, their hopes beyond military service. This wasn't the cold professionalism she expected from a commanding officer, but genuine care for those under his protection. "You look nervous," said Sarah Martinez, the human woman who had volunteered to serve as her cultural advisor. Sarah was Admiral Chun's aide, a young officer with kind eyes and seemingly endless patience for Zarathak's questions about human customs. "I am," Zarathak admitted quietly. 3 days ago, I thought I was sacrificing myself for peace. Now I'm not sure what I'm doing." "You're taking a leap of faith," Sarah replied with that human expression of warmth they called a smile. "Marcus Admiral Chun, he's nervous too. He told me this morning that he hopes he can be worthy of your trust." The ceremony began with traditional music from both cultures, creating an otherworldly harmony that seemed to represent the union itself. Veltar throat singing provided a deep, resonant foundation while human instruments added melody and rhythm above it. The combination should have clashed horribly, but somehow it worked, each tradition strengthening the other. When Zarathak began her walk down the aisle, she felt every eye upon her. Her wedding dress was a masterwork of both cultures, with Veltar's ceremonial armor adapted into an elegant gown that caught the sunlight like captured fire. Human seamstresses had worked with Veltar artisans to create something that honored both traditions while being uniquely beautiful. Admiral Chun stood waiting with calm dignity, his expression serious but not grim. When their eyes met, she saw no fear, no reluctance, no calculation. Instead, she saw respect and something that might have been the beginning of genuine affection. He offered his hand as she approached, a human gesture she had learned meant partnership rather than submission. The ceremony itself was surprisingly moving. They exchanged vows in both languages, promising to stand together against all challenges and to build something greater than either could achieve alone. When Admiral Chun spoke his vows in perfect Veltar, his accent making the ancient words sound like poetry, Zarathak felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't duty anymore. This was hope. "I take you as my partner," he said in her language, "not because our peoples demand it, but because I believe we can create something worthy of the sacrifices that brought us together. I promise to honor your strength, learn from your wisdom, and stand beside you whatever comes." When her time came to respond, Zarathak found herself speaking words she hadn't planned, emotions overriding careful preparation. "I take you as my partner," she said in accented English, "because you have shown me that strength comes in many forms. Your people taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. I promise to be worthy of that lesson and to help build the peace our children will inherit." The moment they were pronounced married, cheers erupted from the assembled crowd. Humans applauded while Veltar performed their traditional chest-thumping salute. The sound was chaotic but joyful, representing the messy but vital process of two cultures learning to celebrate together. The reception that followed was unlike anything in either of their traditions. Humans and Veltar mingled freely, sharing food and stories despite language barriers and physical differences. Children from both species played together under the careful supervision of their parents, creating improvised games that transcended species boundaries. Admiral Chun Marcus, she reminded herself, proved to be an attentive husband even in the midst of diplomatic obligations. He made sure she was comfortable, introduced her to important guests, and explained cultural references when conversations became confusing. More importantly, he included her in discussions about the future of human-Veltar relations, treating her as a partner rather than a symbol. "The real work starts now," he said during a quiet moment as they watched delegates from various species, sampling the fusion cuisine their chefs had created. "Building a real alliance will take years of patient effort, but it can be done," Zarathak replied, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. "Your people and mine complement each other well. We have the technology and military strength. You have the adaptability and diplomatic skills. Together we could create something remarkable." Late in the evening, as the celebration continued around them, Marcus showed her something that would remain in her memory forever. A group of young humans had set up musical instruments near the garden's edge, playing songs that seemed to capture the joy and hope of the day. Veltar youth, initially hesitant, had joined them using traditional instruments from their own culture. The music that emerged was chaotic at first, each group playing in their own style without regard for the others. But gradually, as the young musicians listened to each other and adapted their techniques, something beautiful began to emerge. The human melodies found harmony with Veltar rhythms, creating compositions that belonged entirely to neither culture but somehow represented both. "That's our future," Marcus said softly, his hand finding hers as they listened. "Not human, not Veltar, but something new that honors both traditions while creating its own identity." Zarathek watched children from two species dancing together to music that had never existed before that moment, and felt hope bloom in her chest like the flowering trees around them. The war was over, but more than that, they were building something that could last. Her marriage wasn't a sacrifice anymore. It was the foundation stone of a new kind of civilization. As the evening progressed, she found herself looking forward to tomorrow instead of dreading it. There would be challenges ahead, misunderstandings to overcome, prejudices to break down on both sides. But they would face those obstacles together, and that made all the difference. The frightened princes who had arrived on Earth 3 days earlier no longer existed. In her place stood a woman ready to help build a bridge between worlds, supported by a partner who had already proven himself worthy of her trust and respect. 5 years after the wedding, Princess Zarethuk Chun stood on the observation deck of the joint research station orbiting the binary stars of Kepler 442. The facility represented everything the Human-Veltar Alliance had achieved. A fusion of technologies that neither species could have developed alone, staffed by scientists from both worlds working toward common goals. Through the massive viewport, she could see the construction scaffolding of the first truly integrated colony ship, designed to carry both humans and Veltar to distant worlds where they would build new settlements together. The vessel was enormous, larger than any ship either species had built independently, equipped with human adaptability systems and Veltar defensive technology. "The engines are running at 97% efficiency," reported Dr. Jennifer Harrison, the human chief engineer whose team had spent 3 years solving the power distribution challenges. "Your people's plasma containment technology made this possible, Princess." "Our people," Zarathuk corrected gently. "Human innovation made the power coupling stable enough to work reliably. This is what we can accomplish when we combine our strengths." The correction had become automatic over the years. She had learned that building true unity required constant small choices to think in terms of us, rather than them. It was harder than she had expected, requiring vigilance against instincts shaped by millennia of species isolation. Marcus emerged from the command center, his hair now more gray than brown, but his step still confident. 5 years of marriage had deepened their partnership into something that went beyond political necessity. They had learned to rely on each other's strengths, to trust each other's judgment, and to present a united front when challenges arose. "The Galactic Council has approved our exploration proposal," he announced with satisfaction. "We're cleared to establish colonies in the Andromeda Gateway cluster. 20 worlds, all suitable for terraforming with joint human-Veltar technology." Zarathek felt a surge of pride. The proposal had been controversial, with several council species arguing that the alliance was too new and untested to be trusted with such ambitious expansion. But the success of their research stations and trade partnerships had proven that humans and Veltar could work together effectively. "How did the vote go?" asked Commander Velkoth, the Veltar military liaison whose scales had shifted to pleased blue-green. He had been skeptical of the alliance initially, but had become one of its strongest advocates after seeing what they could achieve together. 12 in favor. 3 opposed, 2 abstentions, Marcus replied. "Even the hegemony voted for us, though they made it clear they're watching closely for any signs of imperial ambition." The accusation of imperialism was one they had faced repeatedly. Several galactic powers worried that the Human-Veltar alliance was simply a new form of conquest, combining Veltar military might with human cunning to dominate other species. They had worked hard to prove otherwise, always including other species in their projects and sharing technological advances freely. "Speaking of watching closely," Zarathek said with amusement, The children are back from their school trip to the Earth colonies. They'll want to hear about the approval. The children, perhaps the greatest symbol of what their alliance had achieved. Not just the offspring of mixed marriages like theirs, but the generation growing up seeing human-Veltar cooperation as normal rather than revolutionary. Young humans who spoke Veltar as fluently as English. Young Veltar who had absorbed human adaptability and optimism, along with their traditional strength and discipline. They found the children in the station's educational section, where a mixed group of young humans and Veltar were working together on a project to design atmospheric processors for the new colonies. The sight still amazed Zarathak, sometimes beings who should have been natural enemies, collaborating as if species barriers didn't exist. "Princess Zarathak," called out Tommy Wu, a 12-year-old human boy whose enthusiasm for xenobiology had made him something of a celebrity among the Veltar students. "Look what we figured out!" The children had developed a solution to one of the terraforming challenges that had stumped adult engineers for months. By combining human atmospheric manipulation techniques with Veltar biological adaptation systems, they had created a process that could make worlds habitable in half the usual time. "That's remarkable work," Zarathak said, examining their designs with genuine admiration. "Have you considered presenting this to the Engineering Council?" "The adults never listen to kids," grumbled Sektar, a young Veltar whose scales showed patterns of frustrated orange. "They think we don't understand the complexities." "Then we'll make sure they listen," Marcus said firmly. "Good ideas don't have age requirements. I'll arrange for you to present your proposal at next week's council meeting." That evening, as the station settled into its night cycle, Zarathak and Marcus sat in their quarters reviewing reports from various alliance projects. Trade agreements were flourishing, joint military exercises had proven the effectiveness of combined tactics, and cultural exchange programs were breaking down prejudices on both sides. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Giving up your position in the Empire for this?" Zarathak considered the question seriously. She had indeed given up much the automatic respect of her birth rank, the certainty of Veltar cultural norms, the simplicity of seeing the universe in terms of superior and inferior species. But what she had gained seemed infinitely more valuable. "I regret nothing," she said finally. "The empire I was born into was strong but static, powerful but isolated. What we're building here has the potential to grow beyond anything either of our species could achieve alone." She gestured toward the viewport where the colony ship hung silhouetted against the binary stars. "That vessel will carry families from both our worlds to new colonies, where their children will grow up as citizens of something larger than either humanity or the Veltar Empire. They'll face challenges we can't imagine and develop solutions we never dreamed of." Marcus followed her gaze. "The Kethmori attack changed everything, didn't it? Seeing our people fight together against a common enemy, it showed us what we could be," Zarathak agreed. "But building lasting peace required something more than shared victory. It required daily choices to trust each other, to compromise when we disagreed, to put the alliance above individual interests." They had learned that lesson through countless small conflicts and misunderstandings. Trade disputes that required careful negotiation, cultural practices that offended the other species, military protocols that needed constant adjustment. Every challenge had been an opportunity to either strengthen their bond or let old prejudices resurface. "The next generation won't have our baggage," Marcus observed. "They're growing up seeing cooperation as natural, which means they'll take our achievements for granted," Zarathak replied with amusement. "They'll push further, demand more, probably think we were too cautious in our approach." "Good," Marcus said firmly. "That's exactly what should happen. Each generation should surpass their parents' accomplishments." A communication alert interrupted their conversation. The message was from the Andromeda Gateway, where the advanced survey teams had been exploring potential colony worlds. The lead scientist appeared on their display screen, her expression excited despite the static that marked the extreme range transmission. "Princess." "Admiral," she said, using their formal titles for the official record. We found something extraordinary. The fourth planet in the Kepler 442 system shows signs of ancient terraforming. Whoever lived here before left behind technology that could revolutionize our colonization efforts. The discovery would change everything again. Ancient alien technology always brought opportunities and dangers in equal measure. But Zarethek felt only excitement as she looked at her husband and partner. They had faced the unknown together before and emerged stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead in distant Andromeda, they would meet them as they had met everything else. Together, the alliance that had begun with fear and duty had become something neither of them had dared to hope for. A true partnership that was creating a new kind of civilization among the stars. The frightened princes and the duty-bound admiral had become architects of humanity's and the Veltar's shared future, proving that sometimes the most unlikely unions create the most extraordinary possibilities. Captain Marcus Chun had been unconscious for 3 days when the blue light pulled him from the wreckage of his fighter ship. One moment he was floating in the cold vacuum of space, his oxygen running dangerously low, and the next he found himself standing in a massive crystalline chamber that stretched beyond his vision. The walls pulsed with an inner light that seemed alive, shifting between deep blues and brilliant whites. Strange symbols floated in the air around him, glowing softly as they drifted past his face. Marcus tried to move but found his body held in place by some invisible force. He could breathe, though, and the air tasted clean with a hint of something floral. "Do not fear, human warrior," a voice echoed through the chamber, speaking perfect English despite its alien origin. The voice was feminine, melodious, yet carried an authority that made Marcus's spine straighten automatically. "You have been brought here because your people's war has caught our attention." Marcus looked around frantically, trying to locate the source of the voice. His military training kicked in as he assessed his situation. No visible weapons, no obvious exits, and he was completely at the mercy of whoever had brought him here. The last thing he remembered was the Zephyrian attack fleet overwhelming his squadron near Earth's outer defense grid. "Where am I?" Marcus called out, his voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "What happened to my ship, my crew?" The air in front of him began to shimmer, and slowly a figure materialized. Marcus had seen many alien species during humanity's expansion into space, but nothing had prepared him for what stood before him. She was tall, nearly 8 feet in height, with skin that seemed to be made of living starlight. Her features were elegant and sharp, with large eyes that held the depth of galaxies. She wore robes that flowed like liquid mercury, and a crown of what appeared to be crystallized lightning sat upon her head. "I am Queen Zyreleth of the Astral Dominion," she said, taking a step closer to Marcus. "Your ship was destroyed, but we retrieved you moments before your life support failed. As for your crew, they perished when the Zephyrians breached your hull." Marcus felt a stab of grief at the confirmation of his fears, but he pushed it down. There would be time to mourn later. Right now, he needed to understand why he was here and what this alien queen wanted with him. "Why save me?" he asked directly. "And why can you speak my language?" Queen Zyreleth smiled, an expression that was both beautiful and terrifying. "We have been watching your species for some time, Marcus Chun. Your people call it humanity, but we know you by a different name. We call you the Unyielding Flame because in all our centuries of observation, we have never seen a species fight with such determination against impossible odds." She gestured, and the air around them filled with holographic images. Marcus saw scenes of human history, ancient battles, world wars, the first steps on Mars, and the recent conflicts with hostile alien species. Each image showed humans facing overwhelming challenges and somehow finding a way to survive and grow stronger. "The Zephyrians are not your only enemy," the Queen continued. "They are merely the latest in a long line of species that seek to extinguish what they see as a threat. But they do not understand what we have learned. Humanity's greatest strength is not your technology or your numbers. It is your refusal to surrender, even when facing certain death." Marcus watched as the images shifted to show massive alien fleets, each one representing a different species, all converging on human space. His heart sank as he realized the true scope of what humanity was facing. The Zephyrian attack was just the beginning. You're telling me we're about to be wiped out? Marcus said grimly. So why bring me here? Why not just let it happen? The Queen's expression grew serious, her galactic eyes focusing intently on Marcus. Because, Captain Chun, we have a proposition for your species. One that could change the fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. She waved her hand, and the images around them changed to show a massive structure floating in space. It was clearly artificial, larger than any space station Marcus had ever seen, with technology that seemed to blend organic curves with crystalline geometry. Ships moved around it like schools of fish, but even from the holographic distance, Marcus could tell they were enormous. This is the heart of Dominion, the seat of our power. From here we have watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. We have seen species achieve greatness only to destroy themselves through pride and aggression. We have seen others show promise, only to be crushed by those who came before them. Marcus stared at the structure, trying to comprehend its size and complexity. What does this have to do with humanity? Everything, the Queen replied. Because for the first time in our long existence, we have found a species that we believe could be our equals. Not our subjects, not our servants, but our partners in something greater than either of us could achieve alone. The invisible force holding Marcus in place suddenly released him, and he stumbled forward before regaining his balance. The Queen watched him with what might have been amusement as he tested his freedom of movement. "You're free to move about this chamber," she said. "But know that you cannot leave until you have heard our full offer. The fate of your people hangs in the balance, and the decision you make here will echo through the stars for ages to come." Marcus looked around the vast chamber once more, then back at the alien Queen who claimed to hold humanity's future in her hands. He thought of Earth, of the billions of people going about their daily lives, unaware that their existence might depend on whatever conversation was about to unfold in this strange place between the stars. "All right," he said, squaring his shoulders. "I'm listening. What exactly are you offering?" Queen Zeraleth moved gracefully across the crystalline floor, her robes flowing behind her like liquid starlight. Marcus watched every movement, his military mind cataloging details even as he struggled to process the magnitude of what she had already revealed. The chamber around them seemed to respond to her presence, the walls pulsing brighter as she passed. "Tell me, Captain Chen," she began, turning to face him with those galaxy-deep eyes. "What do you know of the ancient wars that shaped this galaxy?" Marcus shook his head. "Human records only go back about 500 years since we first left Earth's solar system. We've encountered evidence of older civilizations, ruins and abandoned technology, but nothing concrete about any ancient wars." The Queen nodded as if she had expected this answer. "That is because the victors of those wars made sure to erase all traces of what came before. The galaxy you know today is built on the bones of countless civilizations that were deemed unworthy by those who came to power." She gestured again, and the air filled with new images. This time, Marcus saw massive battles between fleets of ships unlike anything in current galactic civilization. The vessels were organic-looking, covered in what appeared to be living armor, and they fought with weapons that seemed to tear reality itself apart. 2 million years ago, a species called the Harbingers declared themselves the rightful rulers of all intelligent life. They possessed technology that bordered on the mystical, and they used it to subjugate every other species they encountered. Those who submitted became slaves. Those who resisted were exterminated. Marcus watched in fascination and horror as the images showed world after world being consumed by strange energies, their surfaces becoming lifeless husks. What happened to them? The Harbingers, I mean. "They made a crucial error," the Queen replied, her voice carrying a note of satisfaction. "They believed that power alone could maintain their empire forever. They became complacent, relying entirely on their advanced technology while allowing their actual capabilities to stagnate. When the first rebellion began, they were caught off guard. The images shifted to show a different kind of battle. This time, various alien species fought together against the Harbinger forces, using primitive weapons and tactics but displaying incredible coordination and determination. Marcus recognized something familiar in the way they fought, the same desperate courage he had seen in human conflicts. The rebellion lasted for 300 years, Queen Zyrleth continued. Species that had been enemies put aside their differences to fight against the common oppressor. They learned to adapt, to improvise, to find ways to turn the Harbinger's own technology against them. Sound familiar? Marcus nodded slowly. It sounds like every underdog victory in human history. David against Goliath, the American Revolution, the resistance movements of World War II. Exactly. And that is why we have been watching your species so carefully. You see, Captain Chun, the Astral Dominion, was born from that ancient rebellion. We were among the species that fought against the Harbingers, and when their empire finally fell, we inherited much of their knowledge and technology. The Queen moved to stand directly in front of Marcus, and he could feel the power radiating from her like heat from a star. But we also inherited their enemies. You see, the Harbingers did not simply disappear when their empire fell. Many fled to the dark spaces between galaxies, and for 2 million years, they have been rebuilding their strength. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. And they're coming back. They have already returned, the Queen confirmed. The attacks on your people, the Zephyrian invasion, the mysterious disappearances of entire human colonies in the Outer Rim, these are not random acts of aggression. They are the first moves in a campaign to test humanity's capabilities. The images around them changed once more, showing star maps with red indicators spreading like a plague across human space. Marcus saw the pattern now, the way the attacks had been escalating and spreading, probing for weaknesses while avoiding major population centers. The Harbingers remember their defeat, Queen Zyrleth explained. They learned from it. This time, they are not revealing themselves until they are certain of victory. They are using other species as proxies, promising them power and territory in exchange for testing potential threats. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the implications. So humanity is being evaluated. But why us specifically? There are plenty of other species in the galaxy. The Queen smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuinely warm rather than intimidating. Because, Captain Chun, in all the time we have observed your species, you have displayed the same qualities that allowed the ancient rebellion to succeed. When faced with superior enemies, humans do not surrender. They adapt. They learn. They find ways to turn disadvantages into strengths. She gestured to a new set of images showing human military actions over the past century. Marcus saw battles where outnumbered human forces had used unconventional tactics to defeat larger alien fleets. Instances where human engineers had reverse-engineered captured technology in record time, and countless examples of individual humans performing impossible feats when protecting their people. The Harbingers fear this quality above all else, the Queen continued. It is the one thing their technology cannot overcome. They can build bigger ships, more powerful weapons, faster computers, but they cannot replicate the human spirit that refuses to accept defeat. Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with overwhelming responsibility. So what exactly are you proposing? An alliance against these Harbingers. More than an alliance, Queen Zyrleth replied. We are offering to share our knowledge, our technology, our strategic understanding of the enemy. But more importantly, we are offering something that no species has possessed for 2 million years. She raised her hand and a small object materialized above her palm. It looked like a crystal, but as Marcus watched, he could see that it contained swirling energies that seemed to move in patterns too complex for his mind to follow. This is a fragment of command, she explained. It contains the distilled knowledge and power of the ancient rebellion. With it, humanity would gain access to technologies and abilities that could level the playing field against the Harbingers. Marcus stared at the crystal, feeling its importance without fully understanding it. What's the catch? There's always a catch. The Queen's expression grew serious again. The catch, Captain Chun, is that accepting this gift would change humanity forever. Your species would become something more than you are now. But you would also inherit the burden of standing against an enemy that has been preparing for this moment for 2 million years. She closed her hand and the crystal disappeared. The choice must be made by humanity as a whole, but it must be made quickly. Our intelligence suggests that the Harbinger fleet will begin their main assault within 1 Earth year. After that, no amount of advanced technology will be enough to save your people. Marcus felt the weight of every human life pressing down on his shoulders. And if we refuse? Then you face the Harbingers with your current capabilities, the Queen replied simply. We will not interfere either way. We learned long ago that evolution cannot be forced. It must be chosen. The crystalline chamber fell silent as Marcus contemplated the impossible decision that had been placed before him. Save humanity by transforming it into something unknown, or maintain their independence and face extinction. In the distance, he could hear something that sounded like the whisper of stellar winds, reminding him that somewhere beyond this strange place, Earth continued its orbit, unaware that its fate hung in the balance.